Your Highness, wake up! Your Highness, don't die! Don't make noise! His heartbeat has recovered, this is a miracle. Quickly, get the holy water. What? The holy water is gone? The healing potion? No more? Go, get some food. My head hurts, a bit dazed. Gao Wen seemed to hear someone talking, and then felt a little bit cold. He shivered and woke up from his drowsiness. Everything is gone, the table is gone, the computer is gone, and replaced by a tent, a somewhat tattered tent. The color has become grey and dark, it looks like some years. In the 21st century, there are still tents with such poor materials? He looked around and found that he was lying on the ground, the floor was a bit hard, covered with a decent quilt, and he was also covered with quilts. He could smell the thick blood and the smell of burnt barbecue, from his body. Uploaded. Standing alone next to him, this is a middle-aged blonde man with a worried look. He is also wearing a chainmail that looks a bit like the Western medieval downturned knight in A Song of Ice and Fire. There is also a sword and a steel sword on his right hand. It can be seen that he must be very handsome when he was young, because even with his face full of vicissitudes, he still gives people the feeling of a Hollywood movie star, with a slightly thin face. When he was young, he did not know how many girls and ladies were attracted. Strange, am I staying up late? Those in the 2647276664 group rewarded a liter and owed one more. I drank 3 packs of coffee, made 5 cups of strong tea, went to the toilet 7 times, and didn't sleep for 2 days and 2 nights. The result was still can't hold it anymore. Play a game of Hearthstone to refresh yourself, and then there's no after that? Today should be April 1st, 2018, right? My daughter's first birthday, the cake you ordered hasn't been delivered yet, right? Here. What is the place? Ilun, made me an April Fool's Day joke? Gawain, are you awake? How do you feel? Don't worry, you will be fine. I promised her, I will take care of you, as long as I am not dead. The knight looked vicissitudes of life, a little self-blaming, a little annoyed, it's all to blame, but I didn't find a geomancer among those kobolds. The burn is a bit serious, I couldn't feel your heartbeat just now. Kobold? What the hell? Also, how do you know my name is Gao Wen? Wait, which language do you speak? Are Britain, France, Germany, Japan, and Russia alike? How can I still understand? Hey, am I hurt? Serious injury? It hurts. Gao Wen felt his chest hurt, and the smell of blood and grilled meat came from there. He quickly opened the quilt and saw at least a dozen layers of bandages wrapped around his chest. The blood had soaked through the bandages. This kind of blood loss is not dead. Although it hurts, I can hold it. After all, he was a person who had broken fingers, broken legs, and had undergone several operations. When his wife gave birth to a child, she was pinched all day and night, and she lost 3 caddies. What is the pain? The question is, what happened? Cobalt? Burn? Your Highness? Some memories gush out like spring water, just like a mobile phone is connected to the internet, all kinds of information burst Gao Wen's head. Gawain? What's wrong with you? You won't be stupid. The handsome middle-aged knight stood next to him, the worry on his face growing stronger. Gawain glanced at him and blurted out, Uncle Lancelot, I'm fine. Lancelot? Who is that? Oh, it turns out that this handsome middle-aged uncle is Lancelot, his only knight, a knight with a somewhat special identity. He is Gawain Pendragon, the 5 princes of the Thousand Islands Principality, a prince who has been specially treated since he was a child, a rare daddy in the upper class, and a bully referred to by the Thousand Island Kings. It stands to reason that aristocrats at this level, the sons of grand princes, should have received all kinds of aristocratic elite education from an early age, such as etiquette, diplomatic relations, languages, debates, various courses are lined up, and in this sort and in the world of magic, one should also learn combat skills or knowledge of magic. It is best to become a great warrior or mage, so that there is enough capital to fight for the position of the great duke that everyone envy. But no. Unlike other brothers and sisters, no one cares about him since he was a child, no one asks him to learn this and that. After a long time, he can't do anything. He doesn't make big mistakes and keeps small mistakes. In all aspects, he is far inferior to other brothers. Sisters. Is not very young, but has already corrupted the innocence of many girls. He is 18 years old this year and has just grown up. The completion ceremony was held not long ago. His father, Grand Duke Thousand Islands, could no longer stand him. He named him a baron, and then he was sent to this atonement island for exiling criminals, just like driving a fly. Not seeing his net. Gawain had no mother since he was a child, and only 3 reliable people around him. It is said that the Knight of Lancelot, who has a close relationship with his mother, is the one in front of him. The old butler Marcus, who has been with his mother for a long time, is said to be very romantic when he was young, and has harmed many females of races. Although she is more than 50 years old, she is still very attractive. There is also a 15-year-old little maid, Lena, who was rescued by Gawain from another whip. She is very beautiful. As for why, Lena couldn't help it anyway. Then, here comes the question, a prince who had no mother since he was a child and only had 3 reliable people around him, why would the Grand Duke indulge him instead of strictly discipline him, and after he became an adult, he immediately exiled him to the Island of Atonement, which will never see the sun, a desolate place full of criminals? Gawain smelled conspiracy. Atonement Island is a place where everyone in the Thousand Islands Principality fears. All criminals are thrown here, undergo reform through labor, and exchange what they get through hard work for daily necessities. There is no deadline, from birth to death. It is said that for hundreds of years, no one has ever escaped. Once in the Island of Atonement, they will never be able to get out again. The same goes for the prince. Gawain's fief was not the Island of Atonement, and the Grand Duke would not be able to seal such an important place to an unfavored son, even in name only. His fief is the Jackal Plain on the south side of Atonement Island, with a radius of 3,000 kilometers. This is still far beyond the Baron's fief standard. It is estimated that it is to show the noble status of the prince. Anyway, except for the jackals, there are jackals. It is said that there is only a desolate Jinsha village, where Jaoan really means manor. A small fief at the level of knights. The boat drew ashore, and Gawain, his knight, butler, maid, and 73 farmers were driven down, but after a short while, they were attacked by kobolds. Yes, kobold. The entire underground of Yom Kippur Island is full of kobolds, and they often run around on the ground. These monsters that are only 3 feet tall, gathered in groups, gathered more than 300 people, and attacked them. They are not strong in fighting power, even the farmer with a is not as good as the farmer with a hoe, and only when the number of people far exceeds the enemy, Uyuganshu www.uyuganshu.com dare to attack. Lancelot, this down and out knight, showed great power, just like a hero in the novel. He rushed directly into the kobolds and killed more than a dozen kobolds. Then the crowd was enthusiastic, and more than 40 adult farmers took up weapons to counterattack, causing panic among the kobolds, and the kobolds fled. Well, they are like this. Once they see that the enemy is not easy to provoke, they will run away immediately, without any discipline or sense of honor. No one thought that among those kobolds, there was a very smart kobold geomancer. It recognized at a glance who is the most noble among these people. Gawain is the only one wearing gorgeous aristocratic clothes among everyone, and a 3-year-old child can see it. So, it threw a fireball. So Gawain was seriously injured and died. Earth Jaoan, who paid his debts overnight with code words, died suddenly and his soul passed through. Is probably the reason for the similar pronunciation of the names. In short, Gao Wen penetrated into Gao Wen's body, and Gao Wen was resurrected to become Gao Wen. The question now is, in this world where swords and magic, dragons and kobolds really exist, how can I survive? Exiled, seriously wounded and dying, there are only 3 trustworthy people, there are terrible jackals and kobolds everywhere, is there such a miserable traverser? Gao Wen calmed down, and then found that inside his body, there seemed to be a yellowed box with a wooden texture. It was very high-end. In the middle of the box was a dribbling orb, like a blue planet that shrank countless times. When Gao Wen focused his attention on the orb, the familiar word Azeroth immediately appeared in his mind. Gao Wen breathed a sigh of relief. Sure enough, those who travel through have benefits, and the novel is not a lie. Lay on the bed, narrowed his eyes, and looked to the ceiling. Then, on the ceiling, there was an image that only he could see. In the center of the wooden box, a blue planet was spinning slowly and lines of text appeared on it. Name, Jiaoan Pendragon Race, Human Main Profession, Tier 1 Azeroth Summoner, 0/100, Experience points can be gained by using Seal cards 1 star Basic card 1 point, Ordinary card 2 points, Rare card 4 points, Epic card 8 points, Legendary card 16 points, 10 times for 2 STAR cards, 100 times for 3 STAR cards, and so on. Sealed cards can be obtained through sacrifice. Vice class, none, optional, warrior, shaman, rogue, paladin, hunter, druid, warlock, mage, priest. Attack index, 0, represents comprehensive attack power. Attack index 0 does not mean that there is no attack power, but the comprehensive attack power is less than 1 star. Defense index, 1, representing comprehensive defense power, spell, none weapon, none follower, none cards held, none task, none status, severe chest burn, excessive blood loss, extreme weakness, near death. Azeroth, World of Warcraft, or Hearthstone. Are there any classes available? The box is the Hearthstone box, and the Azure planet is the projection of Azeroth, a peculiar planet with infinite timeline. Gawain's gaze focused on the 3 words Vice Profession. These 3 words were highlighted, and then a small window appeared. It was a Jugaga. The Jugaga was 9 completely different dynamic characters. Like Haribo, it's the same as the moving photos in Special. Anduin, Garrosh, Uther, Jaina, Gul'dan, Rexxar, Valera, Thrall, Malfurion. Every character represents a profession. You can get a brief introduction of which deputy you are looking for. And he has a chance to choose a secondary career. Each class has a basic hero skill, and the only one that can heal injuries is the priest. His injuries are very serious, the kind that is dying, and urgently need treatment. So, there is no choice at all. In order to survive, I can only choose the pastor. Gawain smiled bitterly, his eyes focused on the image of the young blonde priest Anduin, and saw the priest smile at Gawain. His 9th house glowed blue, projecting a blue holographic image. Unexpectedly it's Gao Wen's appearance. Immediately afterwards, 2 lines of text in Gawain's attributes changed immediately. Associate profession, trainee pastor spell, lesser healing, once a day, heals minor injuries. Gao Wen raised his hand and muttered weak healing silently. A cloud of white light appeared, and then fell on his chest. Then, a miracle appeared. He immediately felt itching in his chest. It seemed that the wound was beginning to heal. The effect is so good. Damn jackals! Jackal plains are full of jackals. We may be in danger at any time. It's getting dark, and it's dangerous tonight. Gawain, don't leave me more than 10 meters. If you are in danger, others I can only abandon it, and I will definitely protect you alive. Lancelot was talking about something, and suddenly he said huh and saw the white light in Gawain's hand. Holy light! Gawain, when did you become a priest? Why don't I know? There are priests in this world, there are holy priests who use holy light, shadow priests who use shadow, and commandment priests who use both. Of course, there are also spiritual priests who serve the gods. There are many spiritual churches in the Thousand Islands Principality, and there are also holy light beliefs, but the number of pastors is not large, and pious meditation is needed. The holy pastors need the blessing of the holy light. When did Gao Wen meditate? How can he use the holy light? The child of the great mage actually got the blessing of the holy light? Or got the favor of a certain from the light god system? Is this luck or irony? Lancelot's eyes were moist, and his heart was half sour and half ecstatic. Gao Wen is a pastor, he can heal himself, he can't die. Uncle Lancelot, I've never been a fool. Gawain smiled, looked at the knight in front of him, blinked, and then lines of text appeared on Lancelot's head, like a QQ chat box. The bubbling, name, Lancelot Pendragon race, human occupation, knight attack index, 4 defensive index, 3 equipment, chain mail, steel sword. Status, fell invaded in the left arm, severely atrophy and mild frostbite on the left leg. There is not much information, but it can at least show the general strength of Lancelot. The most common knights in this world are all tier 2 arms, and Templars, Orcs, and Wolf Cavalry are all tier 3 arms. Attack index is 4, how many times higher than Gawain. Defense index is also 2 stars more than Gawain. This attribute is the higher attribute of tier 3 arms, so Lancelot should have the strength of tier 3 mid-tupper. Well, the start was not as bad as expected. Lancelot was stunned when he heard Gawain's words. Does not mean stupid. In fact, the predecessor who was killed by the Kobold Geomancer was actually very smart. He has been aware of Duke Qiandao's indifference and even disgust towards him since he was a child. After being beaten and almost killed by his elder brother, and Duke Qiandao just reprimanded him without pain, his younger predecessor understood one reason: there is no family affection under the royal power, and my father is unreliable. If you want to live well, you can only play stupid. So he does not make big mistakes, and keeps small mistakes. According to the meaning of Duke Qiandao, when a qualified daddy was looked down upon by his brothers and sisters, he was careful and exhausted, and finally lived to adulthood. And all of this, the Lancelot knight who had been watching him grow up, was all in his eyes. Such a person, even if he becomes a pastor unknowingly, he won't let anyone know. It's a pity that my ex had no such luck. The predecessor did not get the blessing of the holy light, but the arcane affinity, inherited the mother's talent. It's a pity that for some reason, Lord Thousand Island didn't allow his predecessor to have access to magic, so he couldn't even use a spell. He was very smart, but it was useless. He died under the fireball of the Kobold Geomancer. Uncle Lancelot, what did you just say? Will there be a sneak attack by jackals at night? The secondary healing technique allows Gawain's wound to heal slowly, at least not to death due to excessive blood loss. Can only be used once a day, and Gawain has no choice but to wait for tomorrow to treat himself. But listening to Lancelot's meaning, it seems that you may not be able to survive tonight. This plain is full of jackals, jackals. Lancelot's face was solemn. Kobolds are a shit, jackals are terrible. A jackal can scare away a group of kobolds. I vaguely saw the figure of the jackals before, and there are about a dozen jackals staring at a distance. Now, those guys are afraid of us because there are many people, so they don't attack. At night, human dark vision is not as good as gnolls, and it is beneficial to them. They will definitely attack, and gnolls are very smart. Jackal? Gawain searched for the limited information in his mind, and knew that it was a 7.5-foot tall monster with green-grey skin. Jackals have dark vision and are nocturnal carnivores. They don't like sunlight, but they are not afraid of sunlight. They usually hunt at night. Each country has a general constant of arms, in which ordinary town guards are tier 1 arms, and adult jackals are recognized as tier 2 arms. In the case of Wonatun, fully armed town guards are not theirs opponent. If there are more than a dozen jackals, it should be a small team, and I don't know if there is a captain level in it. It is a level 3 arms jackal brute force, which is difficult to deal with. A squad of jackals is enough to sneak attack on themselves in the dark. After all, although there are nearly 100 people, only Lancelot is really capable of fighting, and those farmers who don't even have a broken sword are considered. Those who are tier 0 arms have no combat effectiveness at all. The situation is really critical. It may take less than 2 hours before he will die here. Fortunately, there is still a chance. Uncle Lancelot, where are the dead kobolds? Gawain asked. Lancelot was taken aback. It's piled on the spot, about a kilometer away from us. The smell of blood will attract the jackal. It was getting dark at the time, and time was running out. There was still 10 kilometers away from Jinsha village. Driving at night is too dangerous, we can only camp here. Fortunately, I didn't deal with it. Gawain struggled to get up and whispered, Uncle Lancelot, you reading www.yuyuganshu.com takes me to find those kobold corpses. Believe me, this is our only chance, the only chance to live. A chance to live? Lancelot didn't believe it. But there is no good way to stay here. When the jackal squad launches an offense, I don't know how many people will die. Lancelot knows that Gawain is not a whisperer, he seems to be really sure. In that case, believe him once. Those jackals are staring in another direction, and they won't care about 2 people who escape in the opposite direction. Their target is a large force. Maybe, this is a good time to escape. As night falls, visibility decreases. Lancelot took the steel sword, took a little bit of dry food, and left with Gawain. Their tent was originally in the corner. Probably out of hatred for His Royal Highness the 5 princes, and the grievance that had to follow him to die, the farmers all stayed far away, gathered together, and Gawain has been isolated. This is the Island of Atonement. You can't get out when you come in. Who cares if you are a prince or a baron? Had it not been for fear and respect for Lancelot, perhaps those farmers who were driven by despair and anger would have killed Gawain long ago. That's fine, Gawain left without disturbing them. Plain area, there are not many trees, it is endless. Visibility is naturally very low at night, but the gnolls have good dark vision. If there is more than one squad of gnolls nearby, it is actually very dangerous to leave the large unit like this. But Gawain has no choice, he can only bet once. Is not far from 1 kilometer. Although Gawain was injured and didn't walk fast, he still walked to the place after 20 minutes. There were more than a dozen kobold corpses on the ground. They were scattered. There were a lot of candles on their heads or in their hands. There were candles everywhere on the ground, which were discarded by the kobold troops when they fled. Candle is a kobold favorite, even better than gold. The head can be broken, the blood can flow, and the candle can't be thrown away. One of the kobolds also held a wooden staff in his hand. Very ordinary wooden staff, the kind that apprentices and wizards don't bother to use. It's the kobold geomancer, the one who set a fireball to hurt you. Lancelot said lightly, I killed it. Is an understatement, but I don't know how dangerous it is. Kobold geologists have a high status, and there must be many kobolds to protect him. In order to avenge himself, Lancelot took a great risk and even got injured when he was walking. His left leg was obviously a little awkward, and his calf showed signs of frostbite. Maybe it was frost arrow or ice spear. Gawain was very moved. Uncle Lancelot, I will trouble you to move them together. Gawain whispered, you know, I can't move it. In order to survive, he was emptied of alcohol, and now he is seriously injured. It is good to be able to walk over, and he has no spare energy. Good. Although I don't know what Gawain wants to do, Lancelot still does it. This is the duty of the knight. He obeys the master's order and never violates it. The corpses were quickly brought together, and Gawain raised his left hand. It's life or death, it depends on whether my travel welfare is good or not. Gawain's left hand emitted a blue light, and countless rotating runes in the light fell on the corpses of the kobolds. Sacrifice. Gawain's main profession is as Wrath Summoner. He uses seal card, and if you want to get a seal card, you have to sacrifice. Anything can be used for sacrifice to form a sealing card, which seals a certain creature, a certain piece of equipment or a certain spell in the infinite timeline of Azeroth into a card that can be used. The sealing card obtained by sacrifice is related to the quantity and quality of sacrifice. The best sacrifices Gawain could find were these kobold corpses. So he came here. The light of Azeroth on the palm of his left hand fell on the corpses of those kobolds, and the azure 8-pointed star array, Hearthstone legend card back, immediately appeared under the corpses. 3 seconds later, the 8-pointed star array and the kobold corpses on the ground disappeared. At the same time, Gawain heard the sound of ding, 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 and 3 cards fell into the Hearthstone box in his mind. Gawain spread out his left hand, and 3 golden cards appeared in his hand. Lancelot blinked, a little puzzled, and a little frightened. Sacrifice seems to be the means of the priest of the gods. By offering sacrifices, he is rewarded by the gods. Isn't Gawain a holy priest? How can sacrifice and using corpses to make sacrifices seems to be the method of the evil gods and devil gods? Lancelot shuddered, then squeezed the steel sword tightly. It does not matter. No matter which Gawain receives, he is her child. That's enough. Back to the tent, Gawain lay on the bed to rest, drinking the gruel that the little maid finally got, and playing with the cards in his hand. These 3 cards are the sealing cards and the source of power for the Azeroth Summoner. Simply put, it is through the sacrifice method that the creatures, weapons, and even spells of Azeroth are sealed into sealed cards, and Gawain can use these cards. There are also levels for cards, and Tier 1 summoners can only use 1 STAR cards. Even if it is a 1 STAR card, there are different grades, from low to high. They are basic cards, ordinary cards, rare cards, epic cards, and legend cards. The 3 cards that Gawain got were 1 basic card and 2 ordinary cards. The basic card is Kobold Geomancer. It is a 2 STAR card. Gawain is temporarily unavailable. The normal cards are Ice Dragon Breath and Wax Oil Element, both of which are 1 STAR cards, which are not bad. Ice Dragon Breath, 1-star normal card effect, inflict 2 STAR damage on a random enemy and freeze it. Wax Oil Element, 1-star ordinary card attack index, 0 defensive index, 2 special effects, Taunt, Permanent, Divine Shield, immune to 1 attack introduction. A weapon made of candles can cause double damage to it. If you use it properly, it can have a miraculous effect. Gawain nodded, and was about to drink the last porridge. Suddenly his face changed slightly. He heard the exclamation, the whole camp was in a mess. The jackal is coming. Lancelot rushed in, his voice hurried, quick. Gawain, follow me. Let's run away as the jackals slaughter the villagers. Escape? The jackal plain is full of wolves. Where can you escape in the middle of the night? Gawain shook his head, endured the pain and got up, clenched the 3 cards in his hand, looked at Lancelot and said seriously, escape? You can't escape, you can only fight. I can't just throw it away. They are all my leaders and the foundation of my future development. Uncle Lancelot, let's go to deal with the jackals. Kill them, I can get the support of the leaders. But the little maid was terrified, with a frightened expression on her face. Nothing but. Gawain said coldly, fighting, there is still a chance to survive. Escape, there is no doubt that you will die. Uncle Lancelot, on the battlefield, which deserter or warrior is easier to survive? Of course it is a warrior. A deserter? How can I escape if I don't even have the courage? Lancelot looked at Gawain appreciatively, with a trace of determination on his face. You're right, Gawain. Escape is useless, you can only fight. Don't worry, your mother entrusted you to me. Before swallowing the last breath, no one wants to kill you. Gao Wen picked up a sword. It is also a prince anyway. There are sabers, and they are of good quality. They are refined steel swords, but they are a bit thin. They are the thin swords that stalkers like to use. They are very sharp. He followed Lancelot, without the old butler and the little maid. They are old and weak, and they are useless. The camp was in chaos. A dozen wolves rushed into it in the dark. The villagers panicked and couldn't organize an effective defense. These villagers came from a village ransacked by sandmen, just in time for Gao Wen to be exiled, so Grand Duke Qiandao waved his hand and assigned these villagers to Gao Wen, making his exile less shabby and blocking Yo-Yo mouth. There are 73 villagers, and there are only about 30 adult men. Basically, they have no training. They are not even militiamen. They don't even have the most common weapons, and their combat effectiveness is too poor. Even if these 30 adult men are gathered together, I am afraid they will not be able to stop the rush of 2 or 3 jackals, let alone the chaotic situation now, and there is no organization at all. There are 13 jackals in total, of which 12 are ordinary jackals and 1 jackal brute. Lancelot's eyes were sharp, and taking advantage of the limited campfire, he quickly found all the jackals, and finally focused on one of them, that was a large jackal almost 8 feet tall, equivalent to a 7-foot strong man among humans, very oppressive. It also held a blood-stained battle axe in its hand, attacking everywhere, no one could stop it. Blood was splattered, some were seriously injured, and some died. This scene made Gawain nauseous. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Fortunately, when he was on Earth, Gao Wen was able to watch some movies and eat with gusto. And Gao Wen in this world has witnessed dead people more than once, and even made it with his own hands on a quiet night in the middle of the night. A maid who tried to poison her was killed, so she was not so scared. He stared at the jackals, and quickly got important information: race, jackal occupation, warrior attack index, 2 defensive index, 2. Race, jackal occupation, brute force attack index, 3 defensive index, 3. Ordinary jackals have a standard second-tier figure 2/2, and jackal brutes have a standard third-order figure 3/3. Their attack power is not as good as Lancelot, but because the jackals are stronger, so the defense is very strong. Can't let them continue to kill. If you continue to kill, my leader will die. Gao Wen flatly said, Uncle Lancelot, let's deal with them. What about you? Lancelot hesitated. The duty of the knight is to protect the master. Gawain, before your mother leaves, let me be your chief knight. I must protect you. I'll follow you, Uncle Lancelot. Gao Wen raised the 3 cards in his right hand and the steel sword in his left hand. Don't worry, I am not a burden. Trust me, I can help you. The first rule of a knight is to obey orders, right? Well, you persuaded me. You are very courageous. This is very similar to your mother. Lancelot was obviously a person, and finally nodded and said, Then, follow me, don't leave me more than 10 steps. They quickly approached the nearest jackal. This jackal is attacking an adult man. The man holds a in his hand, desperately resisting the attack of the jackal, and behind him is a woman holding a wooden stick, and their 2 children, 1 son and 1 daughter. He is the last wall of his wife and children, he can't fall. If he falls, his wife and children will not survive. But he couldn't hold it anymore. The power of the jackal was too great. After several attacks, he threw him down. The sharp claws pierced his chest. The sharp pain made him more awake. He could even smell the jackal's blood. The stench inside. He knew he was going to die, but what about his wife and children? Are they going to die too? Endless panic hits my heart. At this moment, a ray of sword light flashed, and a sharp sword pierced the jackal man's neck from behind, and the bleeding blade was less than an inch from the man's left eye. Jianfeng quickly took away, a drop of blood dripped into his left eye, and the person who killed the jackal had already left. Don't panic, don't run around, the more you run, the more dangerous you are. The man heard a calm voice, raised his head quickly, and saw a pale young face. Evil. Your Highness the Five Princes. The man pushed aside the fallen jackal and looked at Gawain holding a steel sword in front of him. He couldn't believe his eyes. You, killed the jackal. Not me. Gao Vinyang raised his bloodless rapier and pointed at Lancelot, who rushed towards the second jackal. It's him. You may not have heard his name, but I want to tell you that he is a great knight. With him, you can definitely kill these jackals. No, I have heard his name, all of us have heard his name. The man yelled in excitement, looking at the distant figure, his eyes full of respect. Knight's Flower Lancelot, the first knight of the Thousand Islands. We all said that he was just following you. It's just a flower on the cow dung. Gao Wen smiled. No, His Royal Highness the Five Princes, I didn't mean that, I. The man was not good at words, and he couldn't speak in a hurry, and he waved his hands and looked nervous. It's okay, it's just a stopgap. In your eyes, I was not as good as cow dung. Cow dung can still fertile crops, and can be burned when dried. What can a dude prince who only knows about eating, drinking, and gambling can do? Is it a waste of food? Gao Wen said lightly, you will soon know that I am at least more useful than cow dung. Okay, take care of your family and don't run around. You will survive, I promise. The man was stunned, thinking that His Royal Highness the Five Princes does not seem to be as unbearable as in the legend. At least the courage he showed is much stronger than himself, more like a man than himself. Lancelot did not go far, Gawain quickly followed. Lancelot is famous and used to be the best knight in the Principality of Thousand Islands. But over the years, he has suffered along with Gawain. The original knight armor, knight spear, and knight sword are gone, and his physical condition is not as good as before. Fortunately, his fighting experience and fighting skills are still there. If he fights alone, ordinary jackals are not his opponents at all. While Gao Wen was talking, he had already killed the second jackal, and waited for Gao Wen to follow him before rushing to the third one. However, jackals are not fools. These guys are so clever, they quickly gathered around, trying to solve the most difficult bone first. Lancelot was under siege. 7 or 8 jackals attacked him together, and he could only defend hastily. Especially the jackal brutal soldier, who is strong, and the human body can't fight him hard, neither can Lancelot. He retreats steadily, and can only rely on a shield to block. If there is only one jackal brute, he can fight against it with experience and skill, and it is not impossible to even kill it. But there are a few other jackals he has to face, and he can't stop them at all. Gawain, run! Lancelot turned his head and shouted, but saw Gao Wen raise his right hand, a card in his palm glowing white. Then, he heard a very special voice, majestic and full of December cold. Lancelot was taken aback, he has heard this kind of sound, on Bailong Island. That is the voice of a dragon. Haughty and majestic. He seemed to see a white shadow, it was a young dragon-level ice dragon shadow, more than 5 meters long, passing through the sky. Then he really felt the cold, because the card in Gawain's hand disappeared and was replaced by a cold breath, covering a very small beam-shaped area, in the middle of the jackal brute who was attacking him. This is Ice Dragon Breath. Lancelot has seen this spell. Her Ice Dragon Breath spell is equivalent to the breath of an adult ice dragon, dozens of times stronger than this, and can freeze all the jackals here into ice. But even if it's her Ice Dragon Breath, it's impossible for the voice and shadow of the dragon to appear. What's the situation? Gao Wen, who is the you believe in? Could it be some ancient dragon of the gods? In the distance, Gao Wen breathed a sigh of relief. Ice Dragon Breath is a card whose effect is to inflict 2 star damage on a random enemy and freeze it. Random is a problem. If you hit a normal jackal, you can kill it instantly, and if you hit a jackal brute, in addition to severely damaging it, you can freeze it. Fortunately, the most powerful jackal brute was hit. Otherwise, the value of this card would be much lower. Lancelot was very decisive, seized this opportunity and quickly retreated. He didn't take the opportunity to attack the jackal brute, because there were other jackals around, and he obviously couldn't beat it. His idea is very simple: the situation is not good, so I still take Gawain to run fast, as far as I can run. Escape, and may survive. If you don't run, you will definitely die. Then he saw that Gawain didn't even run, but rushed over here. What are you doing, Gawain? Run! Lancelot was very anxious and yelled at Gawain, only to see Gawain's calm face. Does he have any whole cards? He seems to have 3 cards, but now he only uses 1? If Gawain can make 2 ice dragon breath and freeze 2 wolves, then it will not be impossible to kill the remaining 3 wolves with his own strength. It's good to have a caster. Yu read www.yuyugonshu.com. Lancelot's heart, suddenly hope appeared. In fact, Gawain's hands were shaking slightly, and his legs were shaking slightly. For the first time in my life, I walked on the battlefield of killing. It is fake to say that it is not nervous, and it is fake to say that it is not afraid. But he has no choice. Escape? Really can't escape. Can only fight. Jackal was obviously frightened by ice dragon breath. After all, the caster is a very rare and noble profession. With the limited IQ and knowledge of the jackal, it is natural to think that the one who can cast ice dragon breath must be a mage. Any mage, as long as there is enough time to cast spells, it is terrible. After all, among the 9 arms, even the most common mage apprentices are all 2 arms. In fact, the destructive power and offensive power of the apprentice of the mage is level 3, but it takes time to cast spells, requires protection from other units, and the ability to protect itself is too poor, so it is fixed to level 2. The jackal was stunned, and quickly reacted. The best way to deal with a mage is to fight in close quarters and not give the opponent a chance to cast spells. So the next moment, the remaining 5 wolves all gave up Lancelot and rushed towards Gawain with their battle axe. No! You can't hurt him! Lancelot was furious and brandished a steel sword to block the 2 jackals. But there can only be so much, he has no time to block the 3rd one. 3 wolves walked past him and rushed towards Gawain. Gawain is very nervous. The jackal rushing in the front is less than 10 steps away from him. He took a few steps back, clenched the rapier in one hand, and the card in the other, and said silently, "Summon, wax oil element." The card glowed white, and a giant 3 meters tall stood in front of Gawain. This is a giant made of yellow wax oil. It has hands and feet, and has good facial features. On its head is a large candle with adult arms, which is illuminated by light. In the candle light, Gawain saw a light yellow spherical mask covering the wax oil element. This is the so-called Holy Shield? So, where does sarcasm manifest itself? The next moment, Gawain understood. Wax oil element stood motionless in front of Gawain, stretched out his right hand and raised his middle finger. Then the 3 jackals all ignored Zhang Ji and did not go around at all. Instead, they all attacked the wax oil element, as if there was some power in the dark, driving them. They must get rid of the wax oil element. Then you can attack Gawain. The effect of sarcasm is so strong. The first attack of the first jackal was directly blocked by the Holy Shield, but the Holy Shield also disappeared. Then the 3 wolves attacked the wax oil element frantically with axes or bare hands, just like they were attacking their own. It's the same as killing a wife and an enemy. The defensive index of wax oil element is 2, which is the same level as ordinary jackals. After all, although the size is large, the wax oil has low hardness and cannot stop several attacks. Gawain didn't dare to fight for his own life, and quickly took the opportunity to run in the direction of Lancelot. On the other side, Lancelot looked weird. In this world, there are actually giants made of wax oil. How is this done? Which mage is so boring? Wouldn't it be better to use clay or rock? The clay golems and rock golems of the 8 classics, which can be counted as tier 3 units, less to say. And it can also attract the attention of the jackals, so that the jackals don't care about Gawain. Is this the power of spells or the power of the rules of the gods? The creator of this wax oil giant is probably not a mage, but a god? The priesthood of this seems to be a bit too much. Anyway, this is a rare opportunity. Lancelot gritted his teeth, fought a claw of the jackal, and pierced its throat, then blocked the axe of another jackal with his left arm, and took the opportunity to pierce its heart with a sword. Having experienced many battles when he was young, Lancelot has enough experience and skills. If it weren't for the loss of the whole body equipment, and the body is not as good as before, he would be able to kill all of them by himself. Good chance. Lancelot turned and rushed towards the jackal who was attacking the wax oil element. Even if he had rushed to the front, the 3 jackals still ignored him completely and were still attacking the wax oil element. The wax oil element's arm has been destroyed, and the defense index is estimated to drop below 1 star, and it may be completely wiped out in a few seconds. At this time, Lancelot finally arrived and pierced the neck of one of the jackals with a sword. At this time, the other 2 jackals finally got rid of the wax oil element and turned to attack Lancelot. But, it's too late. Lancelot brandished a shield and stunned a jackal, then swung a sword to chop off the head of the last jackal. He gasped, the steel sword pierced the neck of the fainted jackal, and finally returned to the frozen jackal brute, holding the steel sword in both hands and chopped off its neck. Uncle Lancelot! Gawain hurriedly shouted, there are still a few jackals, go and kill them. Lancelot killed a total of 8 wolves, and there were 5 remaining, scattered around the camp. No, there are only 4 left, because there is another one, which was violently beaten to death by angry villagers with farm tools. Even the villagers, after overcoming their fears, can explode with strong combat effectiveness. The 4 jackals are not together, and with Lancelot's strength, it is not a problem to kill them one by one. Gawain took a deep breath and walked to the jackal brute, then endured the nausea and fear, grabbed the brute's head, and yelled, leaders! I am Gawain Pendragon, the 5 princes of the Thousand Islands Principality. Your lord! My knight, Lancelot, the flower of the night, killed 8 jackals. Including this jackal brutal soldiers. Overcome your fears and show your courage. Help the Lancelot knight and kill the remaining jackals. Is very effective in boosting morale. Gawain endured the pain and shouted, hoarse, his voice resounded throughout the camp. Taking advantage of the fire, the villagers could clearly see the jackal head in Gawain's hand, still dripping blood. They saw Lancelot who was fighting the jackal again, and saw Lancelot all blood. They saw the corpse of the jackal on the ground, and saw the ferocious jackal, only a few were left. They hate their lord, but they only have respect for the brave knight's flower. Some villagers who were brave in the first place finally gathered up the courage and screamed and rushed towards the jackal. For my wife and children! Damn jackal! I want to chop off your head! In the distance, Gawain threw away the jackal's head, one staggered and fell to the ground, touching his chest, the wound opened and blood was leaking. He gasped and smiled bitterly. In order not to cause the brothers and sisters to be wary and murderous, the ex was addicted to drinking, this body was completely hollowed out, and even the head was so tired. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Smelling the pungent blood, Gawain was dizzy and wanted to vomit, but couldn't vomit it out. He heard the shouting, turned his head and saw the old butler and the little maid rushing over, finally relieved, smiled reluctantly, and was completely unconscious. I wake up in the morning. Lying on the floor covered with quilts, Gawain was still a bit cold. Fortunately, he has a soft, warm body, which is close to his body and brings him warmth. The familiar warmth, familiar breath, is the little maid Lena, whose temperature has always been much higher than that of ordinary people. Of course, he was not awakened from cold or heat, but from pain, with medicine on the wound. Opened her eyes and heard a faint sob. The little maid actually sobbed from the side. As soon as he saw Gao Wen wake up, the little maid stopped crying, but the tears were still rolling down in big drops, and Iwa brought rain. His Royal Highness, how are you? You shed a lot of blood. Lena thought you were awake. But here it comes. I'm fine, it feels good to be alive. Gao Wen endured the pain in his chest and smiled. It's dawn, it's safe. Jackals generally don't choose to attack during the day. We have at least 1 day left. What's wrong with my chest injury? He remembered that before he passed out, his wound had cracked due to strenuous exercise. S first reaction when he woke up just now was to heal himself with a weak therapy, but found that the wound had healed unexpectedly. What's the situation? Someone in the village hid a bottle of healing potion. The little maid gritted her teeth. There was a flash of fire in her eyes, and a touch of fire made Gao Wen's heart stunned. He didn't take it out long ago. Grandpa Marcus has asked several times, and said no. If it wasn't for your Royal Highness's coma yesterday, he took the initiative to take it. Come out, no one knows. Therapeutic medicine? Gao Wen smiled and understood. Healing potions are products of alchemy. They are very expensive. A bottle of less can cost 50 gold coins. An ordinary worker may not be able to make so much money after working hard for a month. In a place like Atonement Island, there are dangers everywhere. Sometimes a bottle of healing potion is equal to a life. How can someone take it out? I guess it's grateful. I am grateful that I am still a lord. I am grateful that Lancelot killed the jackals and saved their lives, so I took it out. The effect of the healing agent is better than that of the weak treatment. The wound has healed again, at least the blood has stopped, and the problem is not big. Is a little hungry. After all, I have lost too much blood and I need to supplement my nutrition. Lena, go get me something to eat. Gawain smiled and squeezed the little maid, who blushed and ran out. Why am I so cheap? Well, my ex is used to it, and muscle memory is formed. I can't change it. Gao Wen raised his hand and cast weak healing on himself. The wound healed a little, and he was relieved. The effect of weak healing is still too bad. If it is secondary healing, although it is impossible to completely heal yourself, it is much better. Should be considered out of the danger period, and bravely survived. Within a few minutes, the old butler Marcus walked in and saw Gawain wanting to get up, and pressed Gawain back. Your Highness, you can't move. You have to rest. I'm okay. Okay, I won't move, can't I? Seeing the old butler's firm face, Gao Wen was helpless. Knowing the old butler's stubbornness, he had to lie back and asked, how is the situation? How are the casualties? His Royal Highness, 13 people have died. The old housekeeper looked a little ugly, and whispered, 5 adult men, 3 children, 2 women, and 3 elderly people. So, 73 people, are there only 60 left? This blow is not light. All the lives are gone, just like that. In the war years, human lives are thinner than paper. Have you dealt with the corpses of the jackals? Gao Wen asked. No. Lancelot made people pile up, saying it was useful. The old butler hesitated, looked around, and made sure there was no one, then lowered his voice. Actually, I saw your Highness and Lancelot go out last night. Because I was worried about you, I followed up secretly. Your Highness, offer sacrifices nothing. Every church has a fixed sacrifice ceremony. I have participated in it several times and have been rewarded. But sacrifices with corpses are only done by followers of evil gods. You? Fool who? Maybe. But at least let us get through the difficulties of last night, didn't it? Gao Wen smiled, and then asked deeply, Marcus, we have to live, don't we? Yes, I have to live. Your Highness is right. Living is the most important thing. Don't worry, Your Highness, Lancelot and I will fight to protect you. The old butler sighed with emotion, and then asked, His Royal Highness, can you know which you believe in? Everyone has a secret, doesn't it? Gawain looked at the old butler and blinked. Once I saw you swinging with a wooden stick, that posture is much better than that of the lancers in Thousand Island City. You have killed a lot of people, right? You? How did you become my mother's steward? What is your relationship with my mother? How was your vitality deprived of most of it? Have I ever asked you? The old butler was choked, and said with a smile, Actually, there is nothing to hide. If your Royal Highness wants to know, I can tell you. I don't want to know, so don't ask me either. Gawain smiled and said, Let me think about it. I think I will tell you if the time is right. You and Lancelot, both of whom I can trust. This is when I was 5 years old when my mother left. I said before, isn't it? Do you remember? The old butler sighed, looked up to the east, and muttered, Master, where did you go? After dinner, Lancelot walked in. Gawain, we should go. There are still 10 kilometers away from Jinsha village. At the speed of the villagers, it takes at least 3 hours to walk. Lancelot lowered his voice, his face was a little weird, Are you, still offering sacrifices? Uncle Lancelot, who can guarantee safety on this road? I won't encounter a jackal or a kobold camp. Who can guarantee that Jinsha village will be safe? It has been deserted for a long time, isn't it? If I were a jackal, I don't think I will give up such a natural camp, will I? Gawain affirmed, sacrifice must be made. We must have enough means to deal with the danger that may arise next. And our greatest dependence is sacrifice. Lancelot showed an expression of sure enough on his face. Without saying anything, he nodded and said, The corpses of the jackals are all piled together. I will let Marcus take the villagers away first, until you are done. Let's keep up. Gawain nodded. The large army set off soon. 10 minutes later, Gawain accompanied by Lancelot, came to the corpse of the jackal. 13 corpses of jackals, all piled together, excluding weapons. The weapons were distributed to the villagers, and they could use them. Gawain stretched out his hand, as Rotha's light enveloped the corpse pile, 8-pointed star formation appeared, the corpse disappeared, and 4 cards appeared in Gawain's hand. Looking at it briefly, a smile appeared on Gawain's face. 4 cards, 2 crazy potion, and 2 werewolf infiltrators. The card is related to the type and quantity of sacrifices. Crazy potion, probably because jackals are crazy and cruel. As for the werewolf infiltrator, probably because jackals and wolves are both canines. Got too few cards and too little information, and Gawain didn't know how to distinguish it. Crazy potion, 1-star normal card effect, gain control of an enemy whose attack index is less than or equal to 2, for 1 day. Werewolf infiltrator, 1-star normal card attack index, 2 defensive index, 1 special effects, sneak, disappear after attack introduction. They were originally humans, and they know how to enter some human dwellings quietly. UU reading www.uuganshu.com. Crazy potion, if used well, the effect is quite good. Werewolf infiltrator is a good 1-star ordinary card, and there is also a sneak special effect. I don't know how it works. The most important thing is that werewolves are not wolves, they are wise, and humans are transformed by the werewolf curse. Except for the stronger attack power, they are no different from humans. Wisdom means being able to understand one's own words, being able to communicate, and being able to perform more and more complex tasks. With these 4 cards, Gawain finally has some confidence. By the way, what about those wax oils? Gawain suddenly thought that there are a lot of wax oils. Maybe after the sacrifice, he can get 1 or 2 cards distributed to the villagers, used to make candles. You know, we are poor in supplies, and when we arrive at Jinsha village, we always have to light up at night. Lancelot questioned, Gawain, do you want it? Or I will let the villagers hand it over. No need, let's hurry up. Gawain smiled. Even if those wax oils are sacrificed, I guess they won't get anything. Wax oil element? Impossible. Because Gawain had the final say, 13 jackals only got 2 werewolf infiltrators, more than a dozen kobolds, including a kobold geomancer, only got a kobold geomancer. The sacrifice and the reward are obviously not equivalent. Sacrifice these wax oils, what can I get? Forget it, since it's all given to the villagers, it's not good to come back. After all, those are their own leaders. It is still necessary to brush up on good feelings. Otherwise, how can people really listen to themselves, support themselves, and work for themselves? 2.5 hours later, less than 2 kilometers away from Jinsha village, Gawain ordered everyone to stop. Gawain took out a werewolf infiltrator and summoned a werewolf almost 2 meters high, but only Gawain could see it. Because he is in a sneak state. But Lancelot still felt strange, and from the flow of wind and the footprints that were barely visible on the ground, he found the existence of werewolf infiltrators. His comprehensive strength cannot be reflected by a simple attack index and defense index. Don't worry, it's mine. Gawain whispered, go and see the situation in the village. The werewolf infiltrator left quietly. After waiting for an hour, he finally came back and told Gawain what was going on. Gawain's face became ugly. What's wrong? Gawain. Lancelot lowered his voice, there is danger in Jinsha village. Gawain nodded, and said solemnly, there is a group of wolves in it, there are 25. 25 jackals? Lancelot's face instantly darkened, Gavin, you can't go to Sans village. We can't beat 25 wolves. I can deal with 4 or 5 at most at the same time. But the entire jackal plain is endless, and there is only Jinsha village where people can live. Gawain shook his head and said, stay outside for 1 more day, and 1 more day is dangerous. Only by occupying Jinsha village, relying on existing houses, and building some defensive facilities, can we survive on this plain. We can go to Atonement Harbor. Lancelot squinted, Gawain, I know these people are very important, they are your foundation. I also know that I am sorry to give up their conscience, but sometimes, we have to be cruel. Gawain, my duty is protect you, if necessary, anyone can abandon it. Tell all the people the truth, they will go to the Port of Atonement with us. No matter how the jackals attack, I will do my best to protect you. With these people sharing the pressure, it's really possible to reach the Port of Atonement. The distance from the Port of Atonement is at least 100 kilometers? Or more. At least 2 days. And do you think I don't know? The real danger on Atonement Island is never jackals or kobolds, but those who have been exiled criminals. If you really get to the Port of Atonement, someone will always recognize me. Those are all criminals from the Thousand Islands Principality. They were banished to this place where they can never get out. I'm afraid I can't wait to eat the Pendragon family people. Gawain's voice was cold, Uncle Lancelot, it's not easy for criminals to be banished here. I heard that there are also Tier 4 and Tier 5 units. Can you stop them? Lancelot was silent, his face pale. He can't stop it. Even in his heyday, he can't stop him. Because there are some criminals, they are better than his heyday. And it's easy to dodge open guns, but hard to guard against secret arrows. Those criminals have methods. How can they be prevented by themselves? More than 100 kilometers, there are too many dangers and too many possibilities. It's okay for him to be alone, but can he really reach the Port of Atonement safely with Gawain, a very poorly fitted and seriously injured oil bottle? Lancelot was not confident. so, Jinsha village is our only hope. Gao Wen sighed, anyway, we must occupy Jinsha village, and we must before night falls. Jackals don't usually move around during the day. Once it's night, the jackals will become more terrifying, and they are not restricted by dark vision. In addition, there may be jackals in the wilderness, which will be more dangerous at that time. But, how do you fight? The 25 jackals are not a group. They are two teams, one team of 11 people, one team of 14 people, each with a jackal brute, and they have been fighting for Jinsha village. Gao Wen took out the remaining 3 cards, and while the white light flickered, they turned into 2 thumb-sized crystal bottles, as well as a werewolf infiltrator. The captain of the jackal was fought by fighting. The jackal are brave and fierce. I think if the 2 teams go to war, and they are still fighting to death, if they are basically evenly matched, there should be fewer than a few left. Gawain handed the 2 crystal bottles to the 2 werewolf infiltrators separately, and said, "Gnolls can't be hungry. Find a way to pour them in a certain jackal's food or drinking water, and then come back immediately, the others do nothing." "Yes, master." Werewolf infiltrators have human intelligence, know what to do, and disappear quickly. "Gavin, how sure are your plans?" Lancelot understood Gawain's plan, but didn't understand what exactly should be done to make the 2 teams fight to death. He frowned and said, "No matter what your plan is, I have to plan for the worst. If it doesn't work, I will definitely take you away. If it really doesn't work, I won't die. Do you think I'm like a fool?" Gao Wen smiled, and then said, "Uncle Lancelot, how many leaders were brave last night? Call them here, bring weapons, jackal axe or farm tools, and you can't just fight for the Lord and the Knight. They also have to protect their lord, don't they?" The mobilization work was not done by Lancelot, but by the old butler Marcus. This old guy is full of speech and eloquence skills. He has a strong ability to fool people. Otherwise, it is impossible to fool young girls of so many races when they are young. I heard that they still get along with each other in harmony. The aesthetic concept of each race is still different. Gao Wen suddenly became a little curious, what did this old guy do when he was young? His figure is 0/1, which is similar to ordinary citizens. But his status column clearly reads Fell Energy Invasion, Accelerated Loss of Vitality. Like Lancelot, he was invaded by Fell Energy. His body is extremely weak. He looks like he is in his 40s, but he looks like he is in his 60s and 70s. However, Lancelot's left arm muscles atrophy, and he will tremble unconsciously when he exerts a little force. And all of this is related to an encounter when Gawain was 5 years old. Although the old housekeeper is getting older, he was impassioned in his speech, spitting wildly, and stunned those leading people. Of course, it is the pitiful wives, children, and old people behind them that impresses those strong leaders, as well as the tragic situation of their last stand. Occupy Jinsha village, we can all live. Otherwise, none of us can live. The old butler summed up the statement with a dry tongue. Then, he took 5 warriors into the tent of Gawain. Looking at these 5 fairly sturdy adult men, Gao Wen nodded. 3 of the attributes are 0/1, rank 0 arms, and 2 are 1/1, the standard rank 1 arms, but the combat effectiveness is definitely far inferior to the ordinary soldiers of 1/1. 5 fights against 1 is not necessarily can be beaten. He recognized one of them. He still had an injury on his chest and looked excited. He was the one who was brainwashed by himself last night. It is estimated that his favorability has risen to respect now. He works hard and should become his loyal supporter. The figure is good, 1/1, if you get a little training, and then get a full body armor and a steel sword, you can be regarded as a regular guard. What's your name? Gao Wen asked. Evan, my name is Evan Donas, Your Highness. Evan hurriedly stepped forward, respectfully, with a look of excitement. Very well, today the Jinsha village militia team was formally established. You are the captain, and the 4 of you are the team captains. Gao Wen looked at the 5 and said solemnly, I have a way to weaken the jackals who occupy Jinsha village, and then the Lancelot Knight will lead you in and kill those jackals. You are my leaders, and you are also your wife's husband, child's father, parent's son. You have a responsibility to protect me, but you are even more responsible to protect your loved ones. The 5 leaders have red eyes, bloodshot heads, and a bit agitated. Gao Wen smiled. The honest villagers are still very good at fooling around. The old housekeeper has already done his ideological work. Besides, it's not a fool, because Gawain is telling the truth. Occupying Jinsha village is indeed the only way for them to survive. They have no choice. Hey? Did you succeed? Half an hour later, Gao Wen suddenly discovered that he could perceive the existence of 2 living entities, and even images of 2 jackals appeared in his mind. Crazy potion, the effect is good. Gao Wen sighed. It seems that he has established a spiritual connection with the 2 jackals. Not only can he control them, but he can also share their perspective and see the situation in Jinsha village. Unfortunately, it can only last for 1 day. Therefore, you must die. Gao Wen shook his head, and tried to give orders to the jackal, like a fingerarm. Then, let's start. The 2 gnolls belonged to the same squad. The werewolf infiltrators put crazy potions in their food, and when they ate the food, they were controlled by Gawain. He took up his weapon and moved towards the other squad of gnolls. The sight rushed over. But without a word, just start the fight. Because it was a sneak attack, plus 2 hitting 1, these 2 guys killed a jackal directly, causing public outrage. In the face of 10 angry wolves, the 2 guys ran away and quickly ran to their team. Next, it's simple, in the face of 10 menacing jackals, it is of course impossible for this team to do nothing, so the 2 teams started fighting. Because some jackals had already died, the 2 teams were readied. Under the control of Gawain, the 2 controlled jackals preserved their strength as much as possible, did not participate in the most tragic battle, and always wandered on the periphery. In the end, the team of those 2 guys took advantage of the numbers, and paid the price of 5 jackals, crippled all the opponents, and killed 7 of them. Did not rush to exterminate, there is no such thing in the world of jackals, the weak obey the strong. Was defeated, just surrender. Whoever is the strongest is the leader, and everyone else obeys. If you don't accept it, challenge it, win the upper ranks, lose the fuck, or die. In the end, the 2 teams combined into 1 team. There were 13 wolves left, all of them injured. 5 of them were basically unable to move, and 2 were controlled by Gawain. The time has come. Gao Wen called Lancelot to talk about the basic situation, with a confident smile on his face. Uncle Lancelot, your opponent can have up to 4 jackals, is that okay? No problem. Lancelot picked up the steel sword and raised it above his head. Everyone, follow me. Gao Wen smiled, lay down, and enjoyed the massage and care of the little maid. Lord, do what the Lord should do. He has already done what he should do, and the next battle is the matter of the knight and the leader. The battle is on one side. At the moment Lancelot rushed into the Golden Sands village, Gawain had already manipulated 2 jackals and launched a sneak attack on the jackal brutal soldiers. In the end, both guys died, and the jackal brute was also badly injured and lost most of his combat effectiveness. Lancelot rushed up with the villagers, and the smart werewolf infiltrator also broke in at a critical moment and launched an attack. Their invisibility is very strong, no one except Lancelot found it. Unfortunately, once they attack, they will be invisible, and there is no way to use them again. After all, they don't really sneak, but they have relatively strong concealment ability. Sneak is a special effect, not a skill. Kill with 1 blow. The start was ruthless and accurate, and the sharp blade pierced the necks of 2 jackals directly. Then, they cooperated with Lancelot and the villagers to kill the remaining few jackals, and then killed all those who had lost their combat effectiveness. As for how to explain werewolf infiltrators, this is very simple. In this world, werewolves are real, and even in the Principality of Thousand Islands, there are many similar races: werewolves, scavengers, bears. Tauren is basically acting as a slave or guard, which is normal. A prince with 2 werewolf guards, it makes sense. Why didn't you see them in the first place? Because they want to attack at a critical moment? What? If they were there last night, could they kill a lot less? Where does so much talk come from? The arrangement of the prince, is your stupid head able to understand it? Lena, help me up. Gawain was enjoying the support of the little maid, feeling the body temperature of at least 40 degrees on the warm body, and the haze on his face was finally wiped away. He was in a good mood, and he waved his hand. Marcus, inform the citizens, you can enter the village. Took the people into the village. A group of people happily, the air is full of happiness after the disaster. Finally had a home, and they had some less obvious identification with their lord. Took a long breath, Gawain finally took a serious look at the whole picture of Jinsha village. This is a typical small medieval village, with more than 40 houses that are jagged, old, and dilapidated, and can't be sheltered from wind and rain. It should be for the reason of dealing with the jackals. As soon as the whole village faces the water, it is a small river, Jinsha River. It has 3 walls, mainly earthen walls, and some places are still wooden fences. They are all dilapidated and their defenses have dropped by at least 70%. In short, this is a disappointing village, but it is better than nothing. A little bit, as long as the jackals are not aggressively attacking, it's not a big problem. The small river is actually not small. It runs across the Jackal Plain. It runs from the Shenduan Mountains in the east to the west and flows into the ocean. It is almost 30 or 40 meters wide. It is a natural danger. There must be fish in it, at least. Alleviate the food crisis. But there are still a lot of murlocs in this river. It is not easy to catch fish. You have to clean it up first. Fortunately, there are not many murlocs, otherwise it would be really troublesome. Strange, how could such a village be deserted? Did you encounter a large tribe of jackals attacking? Uncle Lancelot, please go down, everyone is free to choose houses, and no looting is allowed. In addition, choose houses near the river as much as possible to facilitate water access. Be careful of murlocs, those guys are not easy to deal with. Gawain sighed and knocked on the table with his left hand at a fixed frequency. After you have settled down, don't rush to clean and repair the house, gather all the adult men, expand the militia, assign tasks and be in charge of patrols. It's getting dark. Hurry up. And you know. Lancelot nodded, turned, and left. It was already around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the sun was not so dazzling, and Gawain's body was not good enough. After a short rest, the old butler walked in. His Royal Highness, all the corpses of the jackals are piled up outside the wall. They are to be buried in name. No one doubts. The old butler said, Lancelot personally guards you, are you here now? Gawain got up. The people are busy choosing houses, and the reasons given by the old housekeeper are sufficient enough that no one will doubt it. After all, the corpse must not be left in the village. The smell of blood will arouse the alertness and attention of the jackal. Jackals are intelligent creatures, not wolves, and humans do not have the habit of eating them. Gawain quickly came outside the fence and saw a pile of dead bodies. 25 jackals, all piled together, it looks like they are not too few. As usual, all the weapons were taken away, even the ragged scales on some wolves were taken away, belonging to the militia. After all, the militia must have weapons and armors, otherwise the combat effectiveness cannot be guaranteed. However, when the leaders searched the Jinsha village, they found some metal objects that were tattered and unusable. Gawain asked Lancelot to collect them and bring them together with the corpse of the jackal. Sacrifice. Gawain stretched out his hand, as Rotha's light enveloped the corpse. Although I have watched it twice, Lancelot is still a little shocked, because I have never heard of a sacrifice ceremony of an evil god. It is so simple. Generally speaking, sacrifices have to have a dedicated priest and priest presiding over them, according to a fixed ceremony, communicate with the gods, and then the gods will show miracles, take away the sacrifices, and give blessings. Ordinary sacrifices cannot attract the attention of the evil gods and lower the power from the kingdom of God. Either they must be high-quality sacrifices, such as creatures above level 5, or they must be enough sacrifices, such as slaughtering an entire village. How can there be a dozen kobolds and jackals who can sacrifice? Lancelot couldn't figure it out, and felt that he had lived in vain all these years. Not to mention the old butler, he was a little worried. Using the corpse as a sacrifice is the style of the Thulhu believer and the demon god believer. If it is outside, it will definitely be surrounded by other churches. Not to mention His Highness the 5 princes, even the eldest prince, the crown prince of the Thousand Islands Principality, and the first in line to the heir of the Thousand Island Principality, will be abolished or even be sentenced to death. This is Atonement Island, Marcus. Lancelot whispered. The old butler nodded. This is the Island of Atonement, a place where people can't go in and out. There are criminals everywhere, and there are dangers everywhere. I am afraid that there are not a few followers of the evil gods and devil gods. Some criminals have slaughtered the village, some criminals have wiped out the nobles, and some are even rebellious high-level generals. What does it mean to believe in the evil gods and devil gods? What's to worry about? Your Royal Highness is right, survival is the most important thing. The corpse of the jackal disappeared, and Gawain had 8 more cards in his hand: Werewolf Infiltrator 2, Crazy Potion 2, Jackal 3, Jackal Gunner 1. Wait. Jackal? Jackal Gunner. 2 new cards, Gawain frowned. Jackal, 2 STAR basic card attack index, 2 defensive index, 2 special effects, taunt, permanent. Jackal Gunner, 3 normal cards attack index, 3 defensive index, 3 special effect, death talk, makes a random follower card in your hand get +2/+2 introduction. The equipment provided by the Dirty Hand Party is not very stable, and accidental injuries occur frequently. Jackal, 2 have standard 2 end level figure, special effect is taunting, used as a meat shield, a barely qualified card. It's a pity that Gawain can't use the 2 STAR card, so he will return 3 cards. Jackal Gunner, 3/3 standard 3rd level body, the key is that the special effects are very strong. It's a pity that it is a 3 STAR card, and I don't know when it will be available. This time offering sacrifices, I was a little disappointed. When playing games, the most feared is high-fee card players, delaying the timing. Although there is no limit on the number of cards in hand, Gawain is still very heartwarming because he cannot use good cards. The Jackal is at least better than the Wax Element, not to mention the Jackal Gunner. The value of the Tier 3 ranged unit is higher than that of the Jackal Brute, not to mention that it is extremely powerful. Special effects. It's a pity, it can't be used. Werewolf Infiltrator. Forget it, wait a minute. Gawain sighed. Anyway, there is no danger for the time being, it is better not to use these 2 cards. Although as long as they don't attack, they won't break into hiding, but the werewolf also has to eat and sleep, so it's impossible to really sneak all the time. If you summon it now, and you don't use the sneak ability for the time being, this special effect will be wasted. Wait and see. Night falls. Jinsha village militia was formally established. Evan Donas served as the captain. The following is subdivided into 4 teams, each with 5 people, and one of them serves as the team leader. 2 teams guarded the middle of the night, 2 teams guarded the middle of the night, and the two werewolf infiltrators also guarded the middle of the night and the second half of the night respectively. As Gawain expected, with Jinsha village, with ready-made houses and walls, safety has increased by at least 2 levels. According to Lancelot's estimation, as long as it is not a night attack by a jackal brigade of more than 30 people, as long as it can be spotted in time, it can be defended. Jackal also has the concept of territory. Jinsha village is the territory of the original 2 Gnoll squads. The other Gnolls will not cross the boundary casually. Once they cross the boundary, it means challenge and war. Only one side can continue to exist, and the other side will either die or be annexed. Under normal circumstances, no other jackals will attack. So, it's really safe. Coming into this world, Gawain had a good night's sleep for the first time. Well, the biggest and best house naturally belongs to him. There is also a little maid who takes care of him. 2 people sleep on the same bed. There is no way, Gawain still has injuries on his body. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com did not heal. In a cold day, there is a warm body to warm the body, and by the way, to warm the wounded soul. How cool it is! Early the next morning, Gawain did not heal himself, but called Lancelot over, raised his hand, and a holy light fell on Lancelot. Several times in a row, Lancelot was seriously injured, and his figure has dropped to 3 halves. After all, the injury not only affects the defense, but also affects the attack. Now there is a weak treatment. Although it hasn't healed, it is almost there, and it has recovered to 4/3. Gavin, you should heal yourself. Lancelot frowned. Your injury is very serious. There is no second bottle of healing potion, you can only rely on yourself. Uncle Lancelot, even if I cure myself, what can I do? I can't go on patrol and watch the night. If I am in danger, you still expect me to fight with a sword? I can't die. The hollowed out body will be inferior to the strong villagers outside, let alone to you, no matter how much training it takes for at least a few months or half a year. Gawain smiled, shook his head and said, you are also injured. Healing you and restoring your full strength is the best choice. Okay, let's not talk about this. I have let the werewolf infiltrator out to investigate. Look. It depends on how the situation is nearby. The militia must hurry up and train. Only by training them into real militia can the safety of Jinsha village be guaranteed. Healed? Impossible. Lancelot's face showed a touch of helplessness. His injuries, as well as Marcus's injuries, were all caused by the invasion of Fel. How easy is it to heal? If she is still there, it should be fine. But she has already left, and she hasn't returned yet. What can she do? I am also very helpless. Lancelot knows Gawain's character and is very assertive. Since he was a child, it's useless to persuade him, and he has been treated after treatment, so he nodded helplessly, I will train them, but at most 2 hours a day. Gawain, they are not real soldiers. No matter how you train them, they can't compare to real soldiers. It takes 3 years to train a qualified soldier, and at least 1 year. Their greatest use is doing physical work, as well as reclaiming farmland and planting crops. It's April, summer planting and autumn harvest. Although it's not the season for planting, it's time to reclaim farmland. Not now. Gawain shook his head and said, Gnolls may appear at any time. There are still many murlocs in the Jinsha River, at least hundreds, right? It is dangerous to go out and reclaim farmland before clearing the nearby jackal strongholds and murlocs. And we have no seeds. And no farm tools. Fortunately, murlocs generally don't go to places that are too dry and don't want to go ashore, otherwise Jinsha village will not be safe. There are seeds and farming tools. Lancelot said, the villagers brought some wheat, barley, and some oats and rye. Although not much, there is definitely enough land. There are not many agricultural tools, but there are some. There are also wood and iron. The grain we brought is for eating, not for planting, Uncle Lancelot. Now we are planting crops, and we have to wait until October to harvest. What do we eat these months? Jackals. Gawain knocked on the table, shook his head and said, wooden farm tools are not easy to use, they are too slow, so they have to be replaced with iron ones. Wait a minute, wait until all the dangers in the vicinity are cleared, and then talk. Lancelot was helpless. He is a knight, not a farmer. What I just said was heard from the villagers, but he didn't understand it at all. But apparently Gawain knows a little bit, which makes him very strange. How can a prince who has been pretending to be a dude for 18 years, understand this? Lancelot shook his head, turned and left. Gawain sighed. At least for the foreseeable time, he can't leave Atonement Island, and when he can leave, he doesn't know. After all, for hundreds of years, no one has ever been able to leave the Island of Atonement, no one, no master. Atonement Island has a transportation blockade enchantment, and no teleportation technique can be used. Atonement Island was covered by an extremely large spherical lightning barrier, and it could not fly out. Once the lightning barrier is touched, the dragon will have to die. Atonement Island is full of murlocs, the beaches are full of murlocs, there are terrible sea monsters near the islands, and the armored warships of the Thousand Islands Principality dare not approach them. The only one that can freely enter and exit the Island of Atonement is the most famous flagship of the Principality of Thousand Islands, Sea King. Only the Sea King with the Sea King skull can ignore the sea monsters, expel the murlocs, and break through the lightning barriers on the first of every month when the lightning barriers are weakest, and get to the shore. Gawain is here. The Principality of Thousand Islands occupied Atonement Island because of the Sea King skull, a terrifying island that even the legendary powerhouse dared not enter. Since I can't leave, I must survive and manage well. Atonement Island is indeed a desperate place of exile, but from another angle, it is also an excellent place to rise. This island is 400 kilometers north-south and 150 kilometers east-west, with a total area of nearly 50,000 square kilometers. It is the second largest island in the Principality of Thousand Islands. It is rich in products and contains ancient relics. There are mountains and waters, deserts and plains, rich in more than a dozen ores including gold mines. There are hundreds of magical creatures in the Shenduan Mountains, and there are legends that there are dragons entrenched. The Principality of Thousand Islands does not control the island, nor can it manage it. It is only on the first of every month that the Sea King docks once, and exchanges cheap goods from the outside for extremely valuable specialties of Atonement Island. This is the criminal of the Principality of Thousand Islands. The real reason for exile to this island. It is said that relying on this transaction, the Thousand Islands Principality earned more profits than even the richest Golden Island. If you can rise here, you have a huge island that belongs to you alone, enough to build an island nation. And everything must start from the small Jinsha village. Gawain also knows the importance of planting crops, but not for the time being. He must increase his power as soon as possible, and the quickest way is to surrender the surrounding jackals and kobolds, sacrifice to obtain the sealing card, in order to fight and support the war. This is the top priority. After breakfast, Gawain, accompanied by the little maid, toured the entire Jinsha village. After an hour of training in the morning, under the command of the old housekeeper, the men began to repair the houses and city walls, while the women and old people began to clean the rooms and search for everything available. Although life is very bitter, but after all, there is a stable place. As fur can't get out? Even if they are outside, how many places can they go in their lifetime? Is not busy in the village all day long, at most 1 or 2 months to go to the town a few kilometers away. Most of them have not been to the city. Atonement Island, enough for them to live on. Seeing Gawain, many villagers began to say hello, and their expressions were not so ugly. After all, Gawain's performance in the past 2 days did not match the legend, nor was it so bad, at least he looked like a lord. Gao Wen is very satisfied. Finally a successful start. The werewolf infiltrator wandered in the wild all day, and finally returned when night fell. According to their report, Gao Wen used a sword to draw a brief map on the ground, and the surrounding area of 15 kilometers is clearly visible. So, there are more than 10 jackal strongholds in an area of almost 200 square kilometers. Gao Wen frowned. Are small-scale jackal strongholds, with a population of about 10, and the largest number is no more than 20. The Jinshuo River traverses the southern part of the Jackal Plain. This is also the southern part of the entire island of Atonement. To the west is the ocean, and to the south is the Murloc Shoal full of murlocs. To the east is the Shendu mountain range. About 200 square kilometers. Jackal men cannot cross the Jinshuo River and attack Jinsha village from the north. Murlocs generally do not go ashore. Therefore, the main threat of Jinsha village is all the jackals on this 100 square kilometers of land. As for kobolds, they mainly live in intricate underground caves, and they are hard to find. And the kobolds are timid, not strong in combat, and not very threatening. Like the kobold geologist who wounded Gawain before, it is actually rare. There may not be 1 out of 100 kobolds. The number of jackals in this area is about 200. There are also a small number of prairie wolves, a small number of antelopes, a very small number of wild boars living near the Shenduan mountains, and then there are rats. Gao Wen calculated it carefully, and he has a lot to do. There are many jackals in total, but they are scattered, and it is not as difficult to deal with as imagined. If 200 wolves gather together and twist them into a rope, let alone Jinsha village, there are usually dozens of guards on the right track, and even a small town with a few knights, they can't stop it. But if it's just a squad of a dozen jackals, it's much easier to deal with. There are werewolf infiltrators, and Lancelot. If a sneak attack is carried out, it should be possible to destroy the weakest knoll stronghold without war damage, and then it is possible to raise the battle by fighting, expand the force, and finally destroy it. All the jackals. Then, you can develop production, take your time. Gao Wen is tired, ready to go back to sleep. A werewolf infiltrator walked in and leaned forward to whisper in a low voice. What? Found an outsider? Just across the river? Are you going to cross the river? Gao Wen stood up abruptly, no sleep.